Hello everyone! This video is a compilation of all the videos I've done so far about how movies were advertised in the 1920s. All of the photos featured here were taken from issues of the trade magazine Exhibitor's Trade Review from March 4th, 1922 to June 10th, 1922. And just in case you haven't seen the other videos before, the advertisements included stuff like posters, lobby decorations, publicity stunts, and collaborations. And back then, many theaters had to do this part themselves, so they often got pretty creative. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. This Beau Brummel was used by the Washington, Detroit, prior and during the showing of Warner Brothers' Why Girls Leave Home. He attracted considerable attention walking about town carrying the satchel, with his umbrella opened on a sunny day in winter. The Empire, Syracuse, New York, makes one board do the work of two by advertising its current attraction on one side and its next attraction on the other. In this case, two First Nationals, RSVP with Charles Ray and The Beautiful Liar with Catherine McDonald, were featured. Harmon Yaffa, manager of the Majestic, New York City, dressed a man and woman in costumes to impersonate Wallace Reed and Elsie Ferguson, then put them to distributing heralds for Paramount's Forever. The people fell for it and reached for the heralds instead of waiting for them to be forced on them. Roy Tilson, manager of the Strand and Regent Theaters, Lansing, Michigan, is a great believer in wax figures as a means of exploiting his features, and generally reproduces as near as possible one of their scenes in his displays. This one was used for First National's The Forbidden Thing. A display representing a stage and its performers was used by Manager Constant of the Strand, Steubenville, Ohio, in various store windows for Fox's A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. They were made from cutouts of posters, with framework of beaverboard, and placed against the glass of the window. Abe Levy of the Strand, Waco, Texas, made this lobby display for First National's Hail the Woman from a 24 sheet, and then painted it with shellac to give it strength under strong light. Levy is one of the most persistent exploiters in Texas, and has put over some good ones lately. The Liberty, Pittsburgh, besides using posters, announced Educational's comedy Saving Sister Sue in big lights in front of the theater. Showing how the Criterion, New York, used electric lights to exploit First National's Red Hot Romance on the most brightly lighted street in the world, Broadway. This window, arranged by the T&D Theater, San Jose, for First National's Woman's Place starring Constance Talmadge, made a direct appeal to the women folks of San Jose with its display of toilet articles. The men folks, though, fell for that big cutout of Connie, mounted in the center and pointing her finger at you. This unique lobby display installed by the Columbia, Phoenix, Arizona, for Goldwyn's The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari carries the futuristic theme of the picture in an effective manner. The Sun, Omaha, Nebraska, put the scaffold of their new theater that is being erected to work in advertising Fox's Queen of Sheba by putting a billboard on it that could be seen for blocks. The box office felt the effects of this unique billboard. A life-size figure of Machiste chained to the mill with real chains attracted a great deal of attention in Portland, Oregon, when used by Manager Bratt of the People's Theater for First National's Cabiria. In addition to this lobby display, he also advertised in the Italian newspaper, featuring the producer, Gabriele D'Annunzio, who has a tremendous following among the Italians. The psychology of photos attracting the public's attention is well carried out in this window tie-up, arranged by the Auditorium in Dayton, Ohio, for Metro's Peacock Alley. Hope Hampton created a near riot in Brooklyn when she appeared in person at Gordon's Olympia with her latest release, Stardust. The banner was all the advertising done. One of the floats used in a parade in Atlanta staged by the Forsyth Theater for Goldwyn's Theodora. The canopy and pedestals were made of beaver board, painted to imitate marble. Draping the horses with some light material so as to hide the distinctly modern harness would have added a great deal to the appearance of this attractive float. When you play United Artists: The Ruling Passion, be sure to order this one sheet from your exchange and put it in the lobby, as it will attract attention. This one sheet for RC's Beyond the Rainbow, made by Otis, reproduces one of the scenes in coloring that is unusually effective. Canadian showmen are beginning to appreciate the value of lobby decoration in exploiting their features, and among those brought to our notice, this one from the Madison in Toronto for Fox's Over the Hill ranks among the best from an advertising standpoint, when the size of the lobby, which is less than 10 by 15 feet, is considered. Two First Nationals recently played adjoining theaters in Akron, Ohio, Mother o' Mine at the Dreamland and RSVP at Barbian's Waldorf. Aside from the marquee advertising, both houses used considerable newspaper space, and the friendly competition indulged in resulted in big business for both. The owner of this window turned it over entirely to manager O'Hare of the Amory, Clarinda, Iowa, for exploiting First National's One Arabian Night. The big figure of Pola Negri and the desert effect were cut out from a 24 sheet, which gives an idea of the size of the window display. This is 100% window cooperation between the merchant and exhibitor for the exhibitor. In a recent issue, we told you how manager Goldman of the Missouri Theater made St. Louis sit up and take notice at a complete telephone switchboard, including operators, he rigged up in his lobby for Paramount's Saturday Night. It sounded fishy, but seein' is believin'. Art panels outside of the Criterion, New York, used to put over the atmosphere of First National's Red Hot Romance. Painted in striking colors on a dark background, they were not only artistic in appearance, but they carried the theme of the feature to a marked degree. Making a window attract even more attention at night than during the day was a feature of the cleverly planned exploitation campaign that was carried out by the Ogden, Utah, for Fox's Over the Hill. In addition to windows, they also put banners on the front of streetcars, as shown in the insert. If there was anybody in Portland, Oregon who passed the Rivoli and did not know that First National's Her Mad Bargain was the attraction, they either needed the services of an oculist or else they should have attended night school for one night more and learned how to read. There was no excuse for not knowing it. This is the stamping machine that was used in Paris for Paramount's Lilane, the name under which your old friend the Gilded Lily is known to Parisians. It imprints letters into the ground with a calcimine finish, and made quite a hit in Paris. A big hand pointing an accusing finger was the dominant note of the lobby display used by manager Cutts of the Columbia, Seattle, Washington, for United Artists Gaunt's I Accuse. The pointing finger was used in all of his advertising, and attracted attention where otherwise it would have been overlooked. This is the ambulance used by manager Hartman of the Rialto, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, for Fox's A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. It is certainly way out of the beaten paths of exploitation stunts. The Auditorium, Pocatello, Idaho, got out a ballyhoo for Paramount's Forever that consisted of a Ford truck encased in beaver board and covered with 6 and 3 sheet posters. Inside was a player organ with its motor connected to the rear wheels of the car so that it played continuously. The Liberty, Newark, New Jersey, put out a horseman dressed in complete Indian regalia for Pathé's serial White Eagle, who rode through the school districts just as the children were coming out for the noon hour. It got the kiddies so interested that the principal of the school had trouble getting them back to their classes. Warner Brothers' Why Girls Leave Home was given a big impetus in Flint, Michigan by manager Garfield of the Orpheum through the medium of attractive window tie-ups. This shows a neatly arranged window of a store devoted to women's apparel, in which an announcement card that forms a small background is bound to be seen. Two more of Garfield's windows for Warner Brothers' Why Girls Leave Home. On the left, the window is devoted entirely to the attraction and the song, while on the right is a small window standing in the center of the entrance of a department store that everyone must pass in both entering and leaving the store. Another one of Garfield's windows for Warner Brothers' Why Girls Leave Home. Among the rugs displayed in it, the big framed still in the background and the small card in the corner stand out very strikingly, and are probably the first things that catch the passer's eye. Manager Haas of the TD&L Strand, Pasadena, California, staged a parade for Associated Exhibitors' A Sailor-Made Man that, headed with a 30-piece military band, marched through the principal business streets of the city. These are some of the red-haired maidens and matrons that accepted the invitation extended by Hope Hampton, the star in First National's Stardust, to attend a red-haired party that was held in one of the newspaper offices in Washington, D.C. during her appearance at the Metropolitan Theater. Manager Mossert of the Rialto, Glen Falls, New York, landed a coffee shop window for a display for Paramount's The Woman God Changed. He changed the window to depict a scene from the picture with cutouts and a few toy structures. A retouched poster completed the display. The manager of the Majeska, Milwaukee, wandered away from the usual in exploiting First National's Molly O, and rigged up an old fire engine, based on one of the comedy scenes in the picture, where Mabel Normand races a bicycle in front of the speeding fire engine. In addition to this ballyhoo, they also used a girl imitator of Molly O on the streets. Without marring the beauty of its lobby, the Sun, Omaha, Nebraska, achieved a notable display for Fox's Queen of Sheba at a nominal cost. In every vantage point in the spacious lobby, they placed either framed posters or stills that blended with its decorations. In the space above the entrance of the Merrill, Milwaukee, manager Wetstein used a black gauze background on which he mounted cardboard figures with strings so that they danced in a ghostly way whenever the strings were pulled. It made a very effective tie-up with the title of the feature, Paramount's 3 Live Ghosts. The canopy of Moss's Cameo, New York, was elaborately decorated with flags and bunting on Washington's birthday, and acted as a magnet, drawing quite a number of passers on 42nd Street in to see Vitagraph's The Prodigal Judge and a Larry Semin comedy. This window arranged by the Vendome, Nashville, for Metro's The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse played to SRO. The horses were attached to the edge of a yard-wide record made of beaver board and placed on a Victrola. It revolved slowly enough for the names to be read, but moved fast enough to attract attention. The largest bath accessories house in Elmira, New York, tied up with the Regent Theater for a cooperative window, and the inescapable relation between the title of Paramount's Saturday Night and the actual act of ablution was emphasized. The display was made up of a 6-sheet, stills, and window cards. Fort Smith, Arkansas had a smallpox scare, and manager Gallagher of the Palace mailed this prescription from Dr. Charles Chaplin to his patrons. It effectively tied up local interest with First National's The Idle Class, and created a great deal of the right kind of talk, which never hurts the box office. Considering the haste with which the majestic Rice Lake, Wisconsin, arranged this display for Fox's Thunderclap, they deserve a great deal of credit, as it was produced on a few hours' notice. While not exactly artistic, it served its purpose by attracting attention from passers. Cutouts and beaverboard, coupled with a little elbow grease and paint, transformed the small, ordinary-looking rectangular lobby of the Globe, McKeesport, Pennsylvania, into a very striking display for Fox's A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court that attracted universal and admiring attention. Will oil and water mix? That question, backed up by two large jars, one half full of water and the other half full of oil, formed the basis of the lobby display arranged by manager Cholt of the Redmen, St. Louis. The answer is to see Paramount's Saturday Night and find out for yourself. The jingling bells of a one-horse sleigh announced to the inhabitants of Lewiston, Pennsylvania, that Fox's A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court was coming to the Pastime Theater for a 4-day engagement. No doubt the man attired as Sir Boss found it rather chilly with his rolled trousers and exposed garters. Floyd Morrow, manager of the Nelson, Fairmont, West Virginia, says to always build a lobby for one picture so, with but a few changes, it can be used for another picture at a later date. He carried this idea out in the above lobby for Paramount's Saturday Night. Curiosity led many people to open these false doors to see what they concealed. They were greeted by a lobby decorated with posters and stills from First National's The Sign on the Door. A unique touch is the box office masked to resemble a safe. It was rigged up by the Regent, Springfield, Ohio. The Cover Theater, Fort Morgan, Colorado, no doubt brought back many recollections of days of old to some of the residents with this display for Fox's Trailin'. The general effect of the wild and woolly West was created by an abundant use of lariats, cowboy regalia, and saddles. Manager Waters of the Majestic, Austin, Texas, obtained permission from the streetcar company to run this old handcar pumped by two Mexicans over the company's tracks for the 3 days he played United Artists' The Iron Trail. Practically the entire population got a view of this ballyhoo on one of its many trips about the town. The comedy atmosphere is admirably reflected in this Otis 3-sheet for RC's Boy Crazy, starring Doris May, that will be completed for release during March. Manager Menches of the Liberty, Akron, Ohio, called attention in lights to the fact that First National's The $10 Raise was based on a story that appeared in the Saturday Evening Post. The Granada, San Francisco, put out an artistic window card frame for Paramount's The Little Minister, which resembles a theater proscenium with 2 pillars supporting the top border. It greatly enhances the effect of window cards by surrounding them with attractive frames. This is an idea for lobby and interior decorations that has been devised by Louis Rosenblatt, one of the executives of William Fox, for use in connection with exploiting their A Virgin Paradise, and we are passing it on to the exhibitors, as it appears to be inexpensive and easily arranged. This is a close-up of the framed-in set used in Rosenblatt's lobby for Fox's A Virgin Paradise. It is made from a poster, and the woman and lion are cutouts. The palm leaves around the frame give the appearance of depth. Shellac the poster and cutouts, put a strong light on it, and this display will stand out at night and attract a great deal of attention. 2 of the window displays arranged by the Circle, Indianapolis, for First National's Penrod. The one on the left has a miniature of the Circle's stage, with scenes from the picture arranged on a revolving drum which permitted the use of more than one scene. The other window was given over entirely to a tie-up with the book. This window, in Schenectady, New York, was given over entirely to exploiting Fox's Over the Hill, playing at the Albany Theater, without alluding to any store article. Everything used in the display was made from accessories furnished by the Exchange, with exception of the letters in Over the Hill, which were cut from wooden blocks. Manager Holman of the Lyric, Burke Burnett, Texas, went out in the middle of the main street and made a tie-up with the guidepost for First National's Man-Woman Marriage. For a little town, this kind of a tie-up is good, as strangers coming in town will look at a guidepost every time, and always read the advertisements on them. Last week, we told you about the ancient horseless vehicle used by Grauman for Paramount's Moran of the Lady Letty. This is it. It is not to be wonder that people started at this relic of the Dark Ages, which contained an up-to-date maid, as it moved through the streets of Los Angeles. You would too. A very effective lobby display was arranged by the Palace, El Paso, Texas, for Paramount's Morals, by using beaverboard and cutouts. Illuminated from above by a baby spot, the white figures stood out in bold relief against the dark drapery that was used for a background. First National supplied the card on the left, the hat and cap manufacturer the one on the right. Done in red and black, they are bound together like a book, and will be distributed to dealers throughout the United States and Canada, to be used in cooperative window displays for First National's My Boy. Electric lights over the marquee and on its side were not enough when the Bandbox, Chicago, ran the Russell production Lone Hand Wilson with Lester Cuneo. The management put out a 24 sheet to boost this popular independent picture. Steve Willett's display in the lobby of the Liberty, Astoria, Oregon, for First National's The Sea Lion certainly had an atmosphere of the sea about it. It made people stop and look. Manager Taylor of the Rivoli, Philadelphia, carried out the log idea in his display for Associated Exhibitors' Rider of the King log. It is an effective tie-up with the title. Manager Adams of the Palace, Corsicana, Texas, says this little stunt for United Artists' The Iron Trail drew many extra admissions to the box office. Phyllis De Angelis of the Paramount Forces accomplished a rare bit of sniping when he put these cards for the Mistress of the World on an old riverboat tied to a wharf near New York. Thousands of automobilists pass over the wharf daily, and the boat has an enchanting past which makes it a curiosity to all passers, who cannot fail to see the feature is playing at the Rialto and Rivoli Theaters, New York. This display, arranged by Knapp of the Temple, San Bernardino, California, for Associated Exhibitors' Harold Lloyd comedy A Sailor Made Man, only cost $8. The Canopy of the Capitol, Detroit, Michigan, showing how Hodkinson's French Heels was linked up in lights with a personal appearance of the star, Irene Castle. Getting a bank window for exploiting a picture is not done every day, but publicity director Coffin of the Bank Enterprise, Omaha, got this one for First National's Polly of the Follies. This display, used by Hoyt's Deluxe Theatre, Sydney, Australia, for Universal's Short Skirts, was animated. The girl in the center would slowly raise her skirt several inches above her knee and then drop it, much to the entertainment of the crowds that gathered and afterwards found their way into the theater. Gus Metzger, manager of the Rivoli, Portland, Oregon, installed this display for First National's Stardust 1 week before the picture arrived. Each banner was 16 feet long and 3 feet wide. They were painted a light blue to look like draperies, with lettering done in gold. This is how Metzger's lobby for First National's Stardust looked when the picture arrived. The extensiveness and variety of the display was made possible by the unusual depth of the lobby. The color scheme of the cards was blue and gold, being in keeping with that of the draperies. The Merrill, Milwaukee, put an extra kick in their teaser campaign for Paramount's The World's Champion by using cartoons drawn by Paramount exploiter R.C. Gary. Number 1 was a simple announcement: The World's Champion is coming, and the other cartoons followed consecutively one at a time, and were 2 inches deep and a column wide. Another animated display from Hoyt's Deluxe Theatre that was used for Universal's Conflict. The logs, with the stars of the picture on them, move down the river and crash over the falls. This sort of a lobby display is described in Australia as a catwalk. This huge cutout of Strongheart mounted above the marquee of the Metropolitan, Atlanta, had a background of canvas painted to represent a full moon with snow-covered fir trees. It stood out brilliantly under strong illumination and was used for First National's The Silent Call. Manager Patterson of the Metropolitan, Atlanta, achieved the atmosphere of a vine-covered cottage in his lobby display for Metro's Turn to the Right. Real branches of peach trees were used in the decoration and on the lattice of the inner lobby. The little weatherboarded hutch is the box office camouflaged with beaverboard. Decorations used in the lobby of the Cambria, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, for First National's The Silent Call. This display was staged a week in advance of the opening. The tree, a fir, seen in the foreground, is not a property tree, but the genuine article, and it acted as a guardian to the entrance. A close-up of Manager Patterson's lobby for Metro's Turn to the Right, showing the detail. In all of his advertising, he was very careful to preserve the rural atmosphere, even to the crude Turn to the Right sign, which he used not only in the lobby display, but in all of his newspaper advertising as well. The colossal figure of Harold Lloyd, used by the Strand, Atlanta, for Associated Exhibitors' A Sailor-Made Man. Uniphone and girls used by Lucas Theater, Savannah, Georgia, for Warner Brothers' Why Girls Leave Home. Lobby of the Majeska Theater, Augusta, Georgia, dressed up for First National's Wedding Bells. One of the window displays arranged by the National, Greensboro, North Carolina, for Goldwyn's Theodora. The vase in the upper left-hand corner of the reconstructed 3-sheet is real and has natural flowers in it. It is fastened to the stiffened poster by means of wires. This front, built out of beaverboard to cleverly imitate a log cabin, served to draw many an interested observer past the box office of the Criterion, Atlanta, Georgia, to see Hodkinson Zane Grey's The Mysterious Rider. Such a front as this is not expensive, and it lends an air of the woods to a theater that makes it irresistible to the average passerby. The National, Greensboro, North Carolina, put out an Oriental sedan with a pretty girl in it as a ballyhoo for Goldwyn's Theodora, which proved to be an inexpensive stunt that carried a real punch. It traversed all the business streets, except during show hours, when it was placed in front of the theater. One of the windows arranged by the Colonia, Norwich, New York, celebrating First National Week. This one, for Jim the Penman, was in a furniture store, and to carry out the theme of the picture, a demonstrator of a well-known fountain pen sat in the window during the run of the picture, demonstrating his pen to the delight of passers-by. The puddle jumper used by the Colonia Theater, Norwich, New York, that helped put over First National Week with a bang in that little burg. All dressed up, this well-known automobile chased over the streets of Norwich as a ballyhoo. It was also used to distribute handbills. Another one of the Colonia's windows for First National Week that put Tollable David over to big business. The entire window, dressed up with 2 3-sheets, 2 1-sheets, and a dummy with a rake against a big First National Week sign that formed a background, was given over to the picture. Located on the main street, practically every inhabitant saw this window. Manager Weisfeld of Saks Strand, Milwaukee, arranged a dignified lobby for Metro's Turn to the Right that was not only in keeping with the theme of the picture, but also carried a good, healthy punch. The 8 panels seen on the right were hand-painted, and each one carried an individual message that ended with the words, "Turn to the right." A big city will fall every time for a lobby like this. It brings that indefinable feeling of the big woods. Arranged by the Prospect Theater of Brooklyn for First National's The Silent Call, it gave everyone who saw it a longing for the woods that could only be pacified by seeing the picture. Lobby of the Plaza, St. Petersburg, Florida, all dressed up by manager Dorman for Metro's Peacock Alley. Moss hanging from the ceiling, large vases full of natural flowers, and 2 peacocks hung on a rope that was entwined with flowers made a lobby display that quickly caught the eye with its beauty. The card between the peacocks holds the name of the picture. One of the hand-painted 24-sheet posters used by the Cambria, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, in their exploitation campaign for First National's The Silent Call. 15 of these posters were put out in the immediate neighborhood of the theater, and leaving the theater name and date off caused exactly what they wanted: talk. In place of putting decorations in the lobby, the Astor, Minneapolis, put their display for Hodkinson's Cameron of the Royal Mounted on the canopy, where it could be seen for blocks in either direction. This shows what good use can be made of a canopy in advertising an attraction. This is a striking illustration of what can be done in the way of an artistic window tie-up. The snow scenes were reproduced with cotton, and by the insertion of tiny trees, a log cabin, a dog team, and a drop showing snow-covered plains and distant mountains, a realistic northern scene was portrayed. It was arranged by the Ellen, Bozeman, Montana, for First National's The Golden Snare. The Regent, Wichita, Kansas, had a platform built in the lobby, and on it constructed a miniature arena resembling the one in Fox's Queen of Sheba. The arena was made of papier-mâché and wooden blocks. The chariots were drawn by toy horses and driven by dolls. A large mountain of white surrounded the arena. Don't kid the 6-legged kid, but kid the kids in Captain Kidd's Kids. Together with the 6-legged sheep shown in the illustration, put Associated Exhibitors' Captain Kidd's Kids over at Moss's Broadway, New York. 2 green lights shining through the dog's eyes in a darkened foyer made this a very striking poster for First National's The Silent Call. It was arranged by manager Ruda of the Auditorium, Dayton, Ohio. When the cop, standing at the left, pinched this car for exceeding the speed limits, it had no sign on it. He supplied the sign seen on the back of the car from his pocket, then took the car over a route that embraced all of the principal streets to the police station. This stunt was used by the Paramount Empress, Salt Lake City, for Paramount's The Speed Girl. A close-up of the Dalton measuring apparatus and the display used back of it by manager Mossert of the Rialto, Jamaica, New York, for Paramount's Fool's Paradise. Manager Dorman of the Plaza, St. Petersburg, Florida, passed up rain insurance, but he had this display insured, which was rather unusual and got him quite a bit of additional publicity. Frank Moyer, manager of the Auditorium, Georgetown, Ohio, a First National franchise holder, organized a jazz band of 5 boys who could play anything from ragtime to grand opera, who not only play at the auditorium but also at dances, parties, and picnics. That big bass drum tells the reason why Moyer supported the band until it got on its feet. Manager Kobe of the Central of New York tied up with 2 stores on Broadway, one at 42nd and the other at 46th Street, in which he arranged window displays for Universal's Wild Honey that consisted of live bees at work in a box of honeycomb. They attracted so much attention at times, it took the cops to keep the crowds moving. Sun-baked Louisville was treated to a real novelty in seeing 2 Arctic Huskies being led around the streets by a man dressed in a heavy fur coat and cap. There were no signs on either the man or the dogs to indicate they were a ballyhoo, so it started the citizens to asking questions on every side, and they were much surprised to find that this ballyhoo was advertising First National's The Silent Call, playing at the Walnut Theater. This display cost $4, including the salary of the young lady behind the washtub. It was arranged by Frank Miller of the Rialto, Augusta, for Paramount's A Homespun Vamp. The farm scenery was borrowed from a legitimate theater, and the girl pretended to use a certain brand of soap that a local store was pushing, so the expense of the display was split 50-50. As soon as the manager of the Mecca, Saginaw, Michigan, found that alterations were to be made on this building, which is close to his theater, he secured permission from the contractor with a few passes to put up these bills for First National's Molly O. Such billing on the busiest corner of a town will always boost business. Manager Coles of the Rex, Spartanburg, South Carolina, featured real action in his lobby display for Paramount's Saturday Night in such a unique manner that it attracted the attention of thousands, one of whom was a news hound, and he gave the display some unexpected publicity. It was made entirely from paraphernalia borrowed from a store. The Eiffel Tower and Ferris wheel were operated by a toy motor. You don't always have to hire a band to make people look at your ballyhoo. Put a punch in it and they will look every time. That's what manager Tooker of the Regent, Elmira, New York, did with this one for Paramount's Fool's Paradise. A 2-horse buggy plastered with posters would not have attracted any attention. Tooker made this one attract attention, even in Elmira, by hitching one horse before the other. A huge cutout money bag advertising Paramount's Get Rich Quick Wallingford, surmounted by a figure of Wallingford taken from a stock poster, made up the display used by manager Lewis of the Lyric Theater, Connorsville, Indiana, for that picture. It was the first exploitation stunt of its kind Connorsville had seen. A flash can frequently be made without killing a bankroll, and the Liberty, Corning, New York, has it down to a pretty fine point. This time, they took a more or less easily recognized sedan and covered it with stock paper, supplemented by a cloth over the hood, then started it to journeying around the streets of Corning as a ballyhoo for Paramount's Forever. Nor did you have to look twice to see what it was advertising. The cost of this lobby display, arranged by manager Weld, Strand Theater, Waterloo, Iowa, during the celebration of First National Week, was negligible. The heads of the stars were clipped from 24 sheets and mounted on compo board. The streamers on the walls and the overskirts of the ushers were of paper. A distinctly Chinese atmosphere was achieved by the Euclid Theater, Cleveland, Ohio, in their lobby display for Paramount's The Mistress of the World. Manager Holloway of the Palace, Macon, Georgia, rigged up a music counter in his lobby for Universal's Playing with Fire. A local 5 and 10 cent store loaned the counter and the music, together with a girl that resembled the star, Gladys Walton. This girl played popular music on the piano, and pedestrians stopped, looked, then rubbed their eyes and wondered when the 10-cent store moved to the Palace. The Branford, Newark, New Jersey, arranged a display on top of the marquee for First National's Hail the Woman that consisted of a cutout from the 24 sheet of a woman with outstretched hands suspended from a small illuminated sign. Spotlights connected to a flasher were placed at the base of the figure and made it stand out conspicuously at night. Manager Myers of the Washington Theater, Chester, Pennsylvania, duplicated a battleship's turret with 2 16-inch guns pointing menacingly across the street for Associated Exhibitors' A Sailor-Made Man. On the turret between the guns, he mounted a big cutout of Harold Lloyd in sailor costume and goggles. Manager Gaines of the Coliseum, Philadelphia, offered any girl $1 a minute to sit in this tub full of water for 10 minutes. His offer was accepted, and when the news got broadcast, it took the reserves from the police station to handle the crowd. The girl went through with the stunt in a bathing suit. It made Paramount's Saturday Night the talk everywhere. This one came from Wellington, New Zealand, which shows they are firm believers in street ballyhoos in that faraway country. The big sign was made from cutouts of posters of Universal's serial The Diamond Queen, and traversed the streets of Wellington for the Paramount and Artcraft theaters. That skeleton was rather gruesome for patrons to pass in order to enter the Travis, Sherman, Texas, to see First National's A Midnight Bell. But evidently, Texans are not superstitious, as the manager reported many of them passed it, at a speedy gait, however. In arranging this display for Metro's Peacock Alley, manager Schnibben of the Opera House, Florence, South Carolina, placed 2 huge cutouts of Mae Murray on each side of his lobby, then stretched a wire from one cutout to the other, and hung separate letters on it spelling the name of the star and picture. Lights behind threw it in bold relief. It made an excellent display. Taking advantage of an empty building on a prominent corner in Poughkeepsie, New York, manager George Davis of the Stratford filled the windows with large stills of Paramount's Mistress of the World, thereby securing a maximum amount of publicity at a minimum cost. While these 2 separate theaters are separated by thousands of miles and the languages spoken by the patrons are different, displays are patterned after ours. On the left is the display of Gaumont Palace, Paris, France, for Fox's Queen of Sheba. On the right, Malheiros in Rio Branco, Brazil, for Universal's The Flaming Disc. Ever hear of Launceston, Tasmania? Well, if you haven't, here is the Majestic's lobby display for Universal's The Rage of Paris, which shows that exploitation has spread all over the civilized world, and we must say it is artistic in every sense of the word. During Go to Theater Week in Seattle, they staged a magnificent parade, and this is the float for First National's Polly of the Follies. A close look at the picture will quickly tell the reason why menfolks of Seattle never care to migrate to another town. This float for First National's Hail the Woman was also in Seattle's Go to Theater Week parade, and is another reason why men don't leave Seattle. Go to Theater Week was one of the biggest exploitation stunts that has been pulled in the history of motion pictures. Manager Kobe has this unique display for Universal's Leather Pushers in the lobby of the Central, New York. Using the name as an arch over a cutout of the star standing between 2 pillars, manager Cobb of the Alamo, Griffin, Georgia, made a very attractive lobby display for Paramount's Her Husband's Trademark. This big banner over the entrance to Asher's Merrill, Milwaukee, for Goldwyn's Come On Over had a punch in it that attracted wide attention. A baby spotlight, connected to a flasher, was placed in the torch of the Statue of Liberty, and acted as a beacon to guide patrons to the entrance. The Haymarket, Sydney, Australia, arranged this lobby display for First National's The Sign on the Door. Only one objection: the still is not working. If it had been, there is no telling how many thirsty patrons this display, arranged by manager Hill, would have drawn into the arcade, Jacksonville, Florida, to see Paramount's A Game Chicken. On the opening of Universal's serial With Stanley in Africa, manager Schaefer of the Parthenon, Brooklyn, borrowed some stuffed animals from a taxidermist and placed them with a jungle setting in his lobby. It made a very effective tie-up with the picture. Another view of Schaefer's lobby. The big elephant is not stuffed, but is a cutout from a 24 sheet. The man standing next to him is genuine, and worked the streets in the vicinity of the Parthenon as a ballyhoo during the run of the serial. Ballyhoo and lobby both attracted a great deal of attention. Numerous stills, some cutouts, and a few scenes of Coney Island were dumped in a mill by manager Gersdorf of the Rialto, Macon, Georgia, and this lobby ground out, which to some extent was responsible for the successful run of Paramount's Saturday Night. A one-sheet poster of First National's The Sky Pilot, showing one of the scenes of that picture, gave manager Shoup of the Mall, Sydney, Ohio, the idea for this ballyhoo, which went a long way toward helping to put this picture over to big business. Striking out for something that would make the residents of Savannah, Georgia sit up and take notice that he was playing United Artists' Dream Street, manager Strozier of the Odeon hit upon this effective ballyhoo with a result that was highly satisfactory. Eastland, Texas is not one of the big towns in Texas, but manager Stalcup of the Princess is a big town exploiter, to judge from this lobby display for Universal's The Conflict. It was made by the boy who posts bills. The two trees are live oaks, which he brought from the creek a mile and a half from the theater. Good work. Instead of playing up the name of the feature in their electric sign, the Majestic Theater, Portland, Oregon, went out of the ordinary and played up First National Week in electric lights. This, with other advertising, impressed the importance of First National attractions on the Portlanders and resulted in big business during the week. The Howard, Atlanta, Georgia, has a massive lobby, and manager DeSales Harrison arranged his display for Paramount's A Fool's Paradise with this thought in mind. It suggested the firmament in the magic carpet sequence in the picture, and the value of the display was enhanced by concealed lights. This beautiful motion picture house, the Teatro General Belgrano, Buenos Aires, owned by Max Gluckman, is now the home of Paramount Pictures in that city, according to the big sign just above the entrance. It is hardly probable that Paramount could have picked a more beautiful home for their pictures in South America than this. Joplin, Missouri is where William Parsons holds forth as manager of the Pershing, and when he played Universal's Winners of the West, he got an idea of a ballyhoo from the press book that he thought would attract attention and at the same time do the job. This is what he put out, and he was more than repaid for his trouble and expense. Ed Stolte, manager of the Des Moines, Iowa, found this young lady resembled Dorothy Dalton, so he persuaded her to dress up in maritime breeches, ride around in an automobile, and deliver data on Paramount's Moran of the Lady Letty. Results at the box office showed that he had worked along the right lines. Mounting a 24-sheet in the back of the lobby, next placing imitation iron bars in front of it to represent a cage, then flanking it with large-sized stills, the casino, Lakeland, California, achieved a noteworthy display for Goldwyn's Theodora that showed real showmanship. Mount Vernon, Ohio happens to be the boyhood home of Von Kester, the author of The Prodigal Judge. And when Vitagraph's production of this novel played the Vine Theater, Mount Vernon got behind it with a vengeance, advertising the author and film in every conceivable way. This shows two of the windows arranged by prominent merchants during the run. R.P. Cohn, manager of the Rialto of Brooklyn, New York, says this window tie-up for Paramount's Saturday Night was one of the best he ever had. A new brand of toothpaste was displayed along with stills of the feature, and a free ticket was given with each fourth purchase of toothpaste. Maintaining dignity in all of his advertising for Universal's No Woman Knows, the manager of the Blue Mouse, Portland, Oregon, hit the bullseye with this lobby. This staid old buggy, reminiscent of old times, was used by manager George Rhea of the Forum, Hillsboro, Ohio, as a ballyhoo for First National's My Boy. G.B. Adams, manager of the Palacio, Porto Alegre, Brazil, went his fellow exhibitors one better and put out a big ballyhoo for Universal's The Moonriders that made the inhabitants of that charming country pour in his theater to see what caused all of this unusual excitement. The management of the Stanley, Philadelphia, achieved the kid atmosphere all right for Warner Brothers' School Days when they dressed the staff in costumes similar to those worn by the performers in this popular feature. It added a lot to the presentation. Vesuvius in action moving around the streets of New York on a big truck was the unique method the Audubon Theater used to gain publicity for Fox's newsreel. It did the job to a fare you well too, as a traveling volcano in action will attract attention from old or young alike anywhere. This ship, arranged in the lobby of the Grand Corsicana, Texas during First National Week, is one of the stunts that helped give manager John Paxton a free trip to Los Angeles as the guest of First National. Manager Cohn of the Rialto, Brooklyn, New York, put out a ghostly ballyhoo for Paramount's 3 live ghosts that made the staid Brooklynites do some tall looking. 30 feet wide and 10 deep is the size of this hand-painted board manager Wetstein put over the front of the Merrill, Milwaukee, for First National's The Rosary. Wetstein got his idea from the fire scene in the picture, and this sign attracted crowds just the same as a real fire would have done. Black and white stills are extensively used in displays in Brazil. Manager Adams of the Teatro Palacio, Porto Alegre, Brazil, put plenty of them in front of his house for Universal's The Moonriders and The Great Air Robbery, and the natives liked them so much that most of the stills disappeared. A judicious use of hand-painted cards with a poster or two made a very attractive display for First National's Shattered Idols that, blending with the decorations, was thoroughly in keeping with the quiet dignity of the Majestic's lobby, Portland, Oregon. The Forum, Hillsboro, Ohio, played 2 First Nationals, The Rosary and a comedy, The Paleface. They centered their lobby display on the Rosary and put out a street ballyhoo for the Paleface in the way of a girl painted and dressed up to represent an Indian. Cutting the lions out of 2 24-sheet posters and mounting them on beaverboard, then placing them on top of the marquee of the Jackson, York, Pennsylvania, was a good exploitation stunt for Goldwyn's Theodora. It was lighted by red lights at night, so it was just as valuable then, if not more so, as it was in the daytime. 3 beaverboard hearts were the mainstay of Manager Johnson's display for First National's Love's Redemption, and the one in the center reached nearly to the ceiling. The lobby was the culmination of a carefully planned campaign that started 2 weeks in advance of the run, and resulted in a good jump in business. The figures in the foreground of this display, arranged by Manager Harrison of the Howard, Atlanta, for Paramount's Fool's Paradise, were cutouts from paper mounted on beaverboard, but so cleverly were they placed and so effective the lighting, they took on a very lifelike appearance. This front for First National's The Rosary was built at a cost of less than $12, so Arch Bamberger, manager of the Empress, Owensboro, Kentucky, says. It was made of beaverboard and light paper stained to represent church windows, with electric lights back of them to give the effect at night. Although Fox's A Tale of Two Cities had 4 years of advertising behind it, Manager Barrand of the Allen, Regina, Saskatoon, Canada, wanted to let people know he was showing it, so he put out a billboard carried by 2 armed soldiers that did the job. Artistic cards appropriately framed will add to the appearance of even the plainest lobbies. The Star, Portland, Oregon, however, has a very handsome lobby, and in arranging their display for First National's The Silent Call, they added a great deal to its beauty. When Charles Ray came to the Metropolitan, Atlanta, in First National's The Barnstormer, Manager Patterson thought his lobby was most too dignified, so with a little hand-painted scenery, he changed it to the Town Hall, that brought back memories of one-night stands through the tank townspeople have read of. This front called a halt to every passerby when Paramount's Her Mate, Moran of the Lady Letty, played the Howard, Atlanta. In the left foreground stood a miniature lighthouse in which a light burned constantly, the revolving effect being attained by means of electrical devices. Manager Gersdorf of the Capitol, Macon, Georgia, took a round frame, covered it with beaverboard, provided a pair of hands, put 12 numbers on the dial, attaching to each number a still from the picture, and at very little expense had a splendid display for Paramount's Midnight. Abe Levy of the Strand, Waco, Texas, used a combination of stars in his display for First National's Stardust that helped materially to put this picture over to big business. The most attractive star, of course, is the one in the center, Hope Hampton, of Stardust fame. Universal has made a tie-up with the manufacturer of a new shampoo that will be national in its scope, and you will probably see a duplicate of this window in your town. While most of this display is given over to the shampoo, it can be seen that the pictures of Universal stars occupy a very prominent place in the window. The Central, New York, usually has a lobby display that is thoroughly in keeping with the theme of the picture playing, but this time, Manager Kobe had to call the assistance of the police to hold the crowds back when he put a man in cowboy regalia mounted on a Pinto in his lobby for Universal's Man to Man. During the showing of First National's Peaceful Valley, the City Fathers of Norwalk allowed Manager Felder of the Gilger to place posters on the trash cans. Using a cutout of the Queen, the manager of the William Penn, Chester, Pennsylvania, built a fan-shaped board for the back of her head, and studding it with electric lights, made a striking display for Fox's Queen of Sheba. Mike Nafee, manager of the T&D, Sacramento, California, put over First National Week largely by virtue of this well-balanced lobby. All of the decorations, except the bit of fern in the box office, came from the exchange. That little greenery, however, made the ladies of Sacramento fall for the lobby. Although normal humanity has only 2 eyes, 3 eyes were constantly employed in the advertising campaign of the Colonial, Bluefield, West Virginia, for First National's Tollable David. The 3 eyes began ingenious, impressive, inexpensive, and the expression fits this lobby display to a fare you well. Manager Eggers of the Lyric, McKeesport, Pennsylvania, built a display for Paramount's Forever that consisted of a white screen upon which were mounted cutouts of the stars, and a brilliant light was placed behind the screen, making the cutouts stand out in bold relief as a silhouette. It made a very striking display at night. Go after the short subjects, says manager Kress of Mays Opera House, Pickaway, Ohio. And with this thought in mind, he got the oldest and smallest electric car used on the lines of that city and drove it over the routes traveled by the other cars, bearing a huge sign advertising First National's Toonerville comedies. The car and its trailer got a great deal of free publicity. Willard Patterson, manager of the Metropolitan, Atlanta, sold the officials of the construction company that was erecting the new Atlanta Trust building on the idea of cooperative advertising, which resulted in a splendid display for First National's Payday in a spot that had never had any theatrical advertising, the sides of a $10 million bank. Cutouts from posters pasted on beaverboard was used to effect this cavern-like lobby in the Liberty Theater, Council Bluff, Iowa, for Universal's The Fox. This sort of a display being new to Council Bluff, it attracted a great deal of attention. During the second run of Associated Exhibitors' A Sailor-Made Man at Lowe's Orpheum, Boston, manager Morris dressed his girl ushers in sailor costumes. When he lined them up in front of the theater for this photograph, they attracted a large crowd, most of which followed them in after the picture was taken. Louis Chakers, manager of the Majestic, Springfield, Ohio, built his lobby display for Paramount's Saturday Night around the Coney Island theme of the picture so artistically that it enhanced the beauty of an already beautiful lobby, and at the same time aroused curiosity in the spectator to see the Coney Island in the picture. Manager Swan of the Empress, Kearney, Nebraska, went out of the ordinary when he secured this elongated young lady to act as a ballyhoo for First National's Molly O. It is rather doubtful whether she would take a prize as Mabel Norman's double, but the attention she attracted while strolling around Kearney on stilts was not a matter of doubt. It was a conviction. Scenes from pictures are frequently duplicated in prologues, but not often are they duplicated in theater lobby decorations. This is one, however, that does duplicate a scene from First National's Smilin' Through, and was arranged by manager Harry Watts of the Strand, Omaha, Nebraska. In his campaign for First National's Smilin' Through, manager Watts was able to get 2 of the costumes worn by Miss Talmadge, and securing a window in the downtown section, he made up a display of them and an oil painting of the star done by Gordon Bennett. The entire window, a large one, was given over to the display. 3 ghosts, each phantom having an eye in the middle of the forehead that glared down on the crowd, and a small banner beneath them announcing that Paramount's 3 Live Ghosts was the attraction at the Lyceum Theater, Bayonne, New Jersey, was the only display used by manager Rosenblatt for this picture. The middle eye was an electric light. "Tell it 3 ways," sang manager Whitehall of the Empire, Syracuse, New York, in putting over First National's Polly of the Follies, and that is what he proceeded to do with this 3-way sign, hung underneath the marquee of the theater. It mattered not from what direction you approached the Empire, you were bound to see some of his advertising on the way. Getting the cooperation of a florist enabled manager Cowles of the Rex, Spartanburg, South Carolina, to arrange a most attractive lobby display for Metro's Peacock Alley by using flowers in front of the stills and posters. 9 human beings out of 10 love flowers, and when they see a display, they cannot help but stop to admire them. Manager Steiner of the Regun, one of New York's neighborhood playhouses, borrowed a bathtub from an apartment house, and, filling it full of coal, placed it in his lobby for Paramount's Saturday Night. It played on a popular superstition that denizens of New York's East Side use their bathtubs in the winter only to store coal. The Regun is on the West Side. This little improvised stage, arranged by manager Whitehall in the lobby of the Empire, Syracuse, New York, was a curiosity teaser that drew people inside just to look around. The idea of Connie Talmadge scrubbing seemed so absurd to many of them that they went on in to see First National's Polly of the Follies and find out if she really did scrub any. It is hardly probable that a more appropriate front could be built for First National's The Rosary than this one arranged by the Empire, Syracuse, New York, which typifies an old stone church. It is not expensive either, and can be used in even the smallest lobby. One of the windows in Los Angeles the kinema succeeded in breaking into with stills of First National's Polly of the Follies. There were plenty of others besides this one. This display, arranged by manager Heil of the Ansonia, Butte, Montana, for Fox's Queen of Sheba, is unique in many respects, and attracted a great deal of attention. This ballyhooer might not have been a real Scotchman, but Harry Finter, manager of the Newark, New Jersey, says that he was a real comedian when he was working the streets of Newark as a walking advertisement for Paramount's Beside the Bonnie Briar Bush, as he had a crowd with him continuously, and his good-natured kidding of the public brought a lot of advertising. In this booth, manager Clancy of the Capitol Theater, Hartford, Connecticut, placed a veiled wax figure to impersonate the wife in Vitagraph's The Sheik's Wife. One of the booths built in the lobby of the Capitol, Hartford, Connecticut, by manager Clancy for Vitagraph's The Sheik's Wife. Views of the lobby of the Capitol, Hartford, Connecticut, showing how manager Clancy placed the booths when he turned it into an Arabian bazaar for Vitagraph's The Sheik's Wife, and the elaborate costumes worn by the Arabs. This float was driven around the streets of San Francisco 6 hours daily during the run of Paramount's Mistress of the World at the Rialto. The canopy was of bright yellow, the whole float decorated in gay colors, and a local dancer sat in the throne chair. The 2 soldiers distributed booklets that told all about the feature. Featuring Coney Island in his lobby display for Paramount's Saturday Night, manager Hart of the Palace, El Paso, Texas, put over a good one for this feature. Manager Samuelson of the Park, Newton, New Jersey, put this kid out as a ballyhoo for Warner Brothers' School Days. While the photo does not show them, he claims to have as many freckles as Wesley Berry. This is not a still from United Artists' Little Lord Fauntleroy, but is a window in Chillicothe, Missouri that was arranged by manager Creamer of the Strand. The figures are cutouts from a poster mounted on cardboard and lighted so artistically that they have every appearance of being real in the illustration. Two more of Creamer's well-arranged windows for United Artists' Little Lord Fauntleroy. The one on the left, in a shoe store, was built of cardboard, with a figure cut from a poster mounted in the window of the display. On the right, a framed 3-sheet made up the display. Everyone in Chillicothe, Missouri knew this feature was playing at the Strand. You who have not forgotten the good old days when a horse-drawn fire engine raced to the fire would have been thrilled when this old-timer raced up and down the streets of Piqua, Ohio, ballyhooing First National's Go and Get It at May's Opera House. It was a good stunt. Into the thoroughfares of Winnipeg, Canada, was sent a man garbed in the dress of a western cowboy mounted on a horse whose head and body was covered with canvas, which told the surprised citizens of Winnipeg that Fox's The Night Horseman was playing at the National. It made an effective street ballyhoo, as a cowboy of this nature was an unusual sight. This cutout from a 24-sheet in an oval wooden frame surrounded by stills from First National's My Boy was worth a dozen ballyhoos, as it stopped pedestrians right in front of the box office of the Trianon, Birmingham, Alabama. Jackie's smile did the rest. A pretty girl riding in an old-fashioned bridal coach lined with buds and streamers and drawn by cream-white horses that were driven by a high-hatted coachman created quite a sensation when it appeared in the business section in Syracuse, New York, as a ballyhoo for First National's Smilin' Through, then playing at the Strand. Ladies, as a rule, do not enjoy boxing pictures, so manager Guy Kennemer of the Arcade, Jacksonville, Florida, did not play up the fistic angle of Paramount's The World's Champion, but did turn his lobby into a gymnasium, something that the ladies are as much interested in as the men. On each side of the entrance, below the 3-sided sign, the Empire, Syracuse, New York, placed 2 overlapping star-shaped panels, one at each entrance, displaying some poignant moment from First National's Hail the Woman. The rest of the display was based on chained womanhood throwing aside the shackles. By getting sign painters to bid against each other for the construction of this special front for Fox's Thunderclap, the manager of the Washington, Dallas, Texas, secured it for only $25. It can be easily seen that it carried the atmosphere of the racetrack, which was tempered by a sign in the center. Mary Carr is the mother in Thunderclap. In a lobby that does not well lend itself to a display, manager Walter McDaniels of Nixon's Palace, Milford, Delaware, arranged an exceedingly artistic front for Associated Exhibitors' The Rider of the King log that was very effective and at the same time inexpensive. Although hand-painted panels may not be within the reach of every theater, where they are available, they enhance the display value about 100%, as you will agree when you take a close look at these painted by house artist Bennett of the Rialto, Omaha, Nebraska, for First National's Hail the Woman. Tying up Paramount's Saturday Night with a window display of refrigerators was a good move made by the Strand, White Plains, New York. Refrigerators offer numerous opportunities for tying up Saturday Night with different articles of food that can be worked into very catchy little ads, the kind that are read. The suggestion of suspense was worked up in this lobby for First National's A Woman's Side in such a way that it probably drew many fans in the majestic Memphis, Tennessee, who would have passed an ordinary display. It also demonstrates the value of catch lines, a point that seems to have been overlooked. Vitagraph's The Flower of the North was strikingly brought to the attention of the residents of Chattanooga, Tennessee by manager Boriski of The American, who built a log cabin front on his theater out of genuine puncheons from the sawmill and not out of beaverboard. His atmosphere was real, and the expense was small. Abe Levy of The Strand, Waco, Texas, has come across with another good display. This time, First National's Polly of the Follies was the victim, and with exception of the border strips and Easter eggs, the entire display was arranged of strips and cutouts from posters. Effective use of a 24-sheet cutout gave the People's Theater, Portland, Oregon, a novel and attractive front for First National's The Rosary. The cutout showing the title and faces of the leading players was turned into a border display that lined the steps adjacent to the box office. The background showed clouds in harmony with the sea settings of the picture. Instead of using the customary log cabin front for First National's The Silent Call, manager McManus of the Colonial, Tacoma, Washington, had a window display that showed the interior of the log cabin, with a kettle over the open fireplace and an old spinning wheel at one side. The exterior showed a winter scene in the big woods. A replica of the battleship Oregon, with an assortment of life preservers, a huge cutout of the star, and many banners, stills, and catchlines, all went into the making of this display for Associated Exhibitors' A Sailor-Made Man. It was arranged by manager Windsor of the Star, Portland, Oregon. Manager Kaliska of the Rialto, Atlanta, changed his lobby into a railroad crossing with a huge locomotive bearing down on the spectator for United Artists' The Iron Trail. In order to escape the locomotive, most of the spectators went inside the theater, which was exactly what Kaliska wanted them to do. Manager Metzger of the Rivoli, Portland, Oregon, arranged a lobby display for Associated Exhibitors' Woman Wake Up with a central figure of Florence Vidor flanked by a number of catchlines and stills. The cutout caught the eye of the passers-by, who naturally looked at the rest of the display. A drugstore on a prominent corner in Birmingham, Alabama, thought they had played Bat Mooney, advertising manager of the Trianon, for a sucker when they sold him their old awning for $1. But Bat fooled them when he turned the awning into a banner for First National's Hail the Woman and suspended it from their electric sign. In advertising Arrow's 10 Nights in a Bar Room, manager Hart of the Palace, El Paso, Texas, put a soft drink stand in one side of the lobby and in the other side rigged up an old-time bar over the box office. The contrast between soft and hard drinks was widely commented on. Jackie Coogan sprawled all over his announcement of My Boy when the First National attraction played the Empress, Owensboro, Kentucky. The effect was created by an immense cutout of the kid, and a banner that stretched across the entire width of the theater front. Bat Mooney, advertising manager of the Trianon, Birmingham, slipped a pass to the building inspector and obtained permission for Howell Graham to build this front for First National's Hail the Woman across 2nd Avenue to the curb. Birminghamites always fall for a display on this order. Manager Coleman of the Strand, Memphis, Tennessee, dressed his lobby up for Warner Brothers' School Days with an efficient school teacher of the non-Valentine type presiding at a desk surrounded by maps, globes, and a dunce on a high stool. Oil paintings were also used. One of the most unique locomotives that have been used to exploit United Artists' The Iron Trail is that of manager Leach of the Eagle, Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada. Sandpaper placed on the rails and driving wheels of the locomotive, which was driven by a small motor, imitated the exhaust of a locomotive, and a bell ringing continuously carried out the effect. Placed directly under the marquee of the Liberty, Portland, Oregon, Charlie Chaplin's cutout attracted a great deal of attention, as it was thoroughly in keeping with the comedy tone of First National's Payday. The comedy idea was conceived by manager Noble, who placed a raised umbrella over Charlie's head, under the marquee. The original costumes worn by the Gish sisters in United Artists' Orphans of the Storm were used to marked advantage in a window display in the heart of the shopping district in Boston, Massachusetts, while the feature was playing at the park. During the daytime, the women were so thick around the window the photographer could not get close enough to photograph it, so it had to be done at night. Manager Noble placed this huge white sign for First National's The Seventh Day on top of the canopy of the Liberty, Portland, Oregon, and illuminated it at night so that it would stand out and be seen from both directions. It was. When manager Smart of the Noble, Anniston, Alabama, played First National's Peck's Bad Boy, he held a Jackie Coogan contest, which included the dog also. And the winner on the right looks enough like Jackie and his dog to have stepped out of the poster. He or she, whichever it is, sure has got the goods when it comes to impersonating Jackie Coogan. In their display for Paramount's The World's Champion, the Liberty, Astoria, Oregon, hung 2 large cutouts from 24 sheets in the lobby. A real punch was given this display by connecting the left arm of the figure on the right to a wheel which was driven by a small fan motor, making it jab the face of the other figure. It worked fine and attracted attention. Manager Vern E. Johnson turned the lobby of the Jefferson, St. Augustine, Florida, into a moonshine still for Paramount's A Game Chicken. In describing it, he said that it did not cost much, but it had the desired effect. Let's hope it had a different effect on his male patrons than it did on us, a very thirsty one. President Robbins of the Avon, Utica, New York, put over a unique exploitation stunt for First National's Hail the Woman when he engaged 2 ex-servicemen to signal each other with the wig-wagging system on one of the busiest corners of Utica. It attracted such an enormous crowd that it had to be stopped after blocking the traffic on numerous occasions. By tying up with a local tractor distributor, manager Bissinger of the Washington put a ballyhoo on the streets of Dallas, Texas for Fox's Over the Hill that made the natives sit up and take notice. The noisy, gas-spitting tractor made all the noise necessary, so there was no use for employing a band to attract attention to the sign on the trailer. A short time before the opening of First National's The Seventh Day, manager Noble of the Liberty, Portland, Oregon, placed a large maritime display in the lobby so as to take advantage of Portland's sea location and interest the theater-going public in sea amusements. It worked. For Associated Exhibitors' Woman Wake Up, manager Miller placed a bed in the lobby of the Rialto, Augusta, Georgia, with a wax figure of a woman in it covered by bed clothing. Around the bed, he strung 15 alarm clocks that exploded at intervals. And while they did not wake up the woman, they sure did wake up Augusta. The Blackstone, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, arranged a lobby for Metro's Peacock Alley with a paneled effect that was obtained by means of painted cardboard frames containing special enlargements of the star and costume. The whole effect was caught together by drapes leading from the top of the frames to a central point in the ceiling. Using stock sheets, manager Brock made an Arabian desert out of the lobby of the Strand, Knoxville, Tennessee, for Fox's Arabian Love. The patron passed into the theater through an opening in the large set on the right that resembled the entrance to an Arabian tent. This resemblance was created by generous use of striped awning. A special gateway to the lobby for Metro's Peacock Alley was arranged by manager Minton of the Travis, Sherman, Texas, by a square arch of beaverboard painted like ribbed marble. It was flanked on either side by cutouts of the star, and peacock panels painted on the walls completed the arrangements. Goldwyn's Watch Your Step came in for a novel lobby display at the Maralta Theater, Los Angeles, California, when they put an old roadster carrying a huge sign in the arch between the supporting columns of the lobby. It was flanked on either side by stills, which added more or less to the display by explaining what it was for. The same big sign painted in the center of this street was seen on 30 different streets in Schenectady, New York recently. It was a stunt engineered by the Strand Theater for First National's Smilin' Through, and sponsored by the local business boosters, who thought it would benefit the city in general. It benefited the Strand, all right. Manager Cutts of the Columbia, Seattle, Washington, got plenty of publicity, newspaper and otherwise, when he started to filming the hat show in the corner window of a department store where Priscilla Dean hats were being modeled. He shot about 175 feet of film, and the resulting publicity secured for Universal's Wild Honey paid the cost many times over, and then some. The park, Worcester, Massachusetts, is an upstairs house, and pulling patrons upstairs to see United Artists' Orphans of the Storm was the proposition they were up against. They did it, however, and one of the stunts that helped was the oil painting of Lillian Gish, placed near the entrance to the dining room of Worcester's leading hotel. No doubt greater wonders were worked within, but George Shade of Shade's Theater, Sandusky, Ohio, worked a wonder without in the way of exploitation for First National's A Perfect Crime, when he staged a demonstration of a miniature automobile moved and controlled by radio in front of his theater. Manager Stalcup of the Princess, Eastland, Texas, could not secure live alligators with which to make a display for Paramount's Fool's Paradise, so he cut some out of a poster, mounted them on beaverboard, and had just as good a display, without running any risk of one of the alligators making a meal of a spectator. Manager Kobe of the Central, New York City, had a job on his hands when it came to photographing his display for Associated Exhibitors' Lady Godiva. It had to be done in the wee sma hours before the street was awake, otherwise the crowds along Broadway would have been photographed and not the lobby. His decorations were based on one of the scenes from the picture. This unusually artistic window display was secured by the Hippodrome, Huntington, West Virginia, for United Artists' Orphans of the Storm. The settings of the window, being imitations of stone walls, ledges, and tile floors in tinted shades, formed a typical atmosphere for the two figures representing Lillian and Dorothy Gish. The Cozy, Paducah, Kentucky, conducted a beauty contest during the run of Paramount's Beyond the Rocks, and not being able to get an empty building for headquarters, they tied up with a music dealer, who gave over his entire store. The inside was decorated with stills and art photographs of Miss Swanson and Valentino, while the banner on the outside drew the people in. Publicity director Cullen of the Branford, Newark, New Jersey, used the English garden effect in his lobby decorations for First National's Smilin' Through with a new angle. The wall was used as the side of a house covered with ivy, the doorway to it being the entrance to the theater, at the left of the lobby. 8 real logs, 6 pine trees, and a cutout of Priscilla Dean holding a cant hook borrowed from a local hardware store were used to make an attractive but inexpensive lobby display by Oscar White, manager of the Rex, Sumter, South Carolina, for Universal's Conflict. The interior of the Columbia's lobby all dolled up for Universal's Foolish Wives. A view of the 5-foot sign with the searchlight under it. The front illuminated by the searchlight. After giving this bunch of Georgia peaches the once-over, you won't doubt Willard Patterson's word at all when he says that First National's Smilin' Through enjoyed a big run at the Metropolitan in Atlanta. With such good-looking usherettes to guide you to a seat, it certainly should have a big run. Are Seattle usherettes competing with Atlanta's? This bunch of maids, all dolled up, handled the crowds that visited the Strand, Seattle, Washington, during the run of United Artists' Orphans of the Storm. They made the sign under which they are standing easier to read. The Tower Block, Saginaw, Michigan, is a flatiron-shaped building at the intersection of 5 streets in the center of the city, and the management of the Mecca Theater drew a royal flush when they covered this corner with billing for United Artists' Orphans of the Storm. The standard, Cleveland, Ohio, got up a good display for Universal's conflict without much expense by using beaverboard and posters. The logs in front, as well as the fence on the right, are imitation, while on the left, 2 large posters were used. The display was balanced by a banner hanging just over the entrance to the theater. The Superba, Los Angeles, went after South Sea atmosphere in their lobby decorations for Universal's Man to Man. The display was not costly by any means, but it was arranged so artistically it attracted quite a lot of attention, and received a great many compliments from all who saw it. Building a temporary marquee was one of the means used by the Strand, Memphis, Tennessee, to attract attention of passersby to the fact that they were playing a special feature. The huge cutout letters on the latticework and also suspended from the canopy told them this feature was Goldwyn's Theodora. A novel and profitable bit of exploitation was put over by manager Joe Jackson of the Strand, Marshalltown, Iowa, for Paramount's Rent Free, when he constructed this little house and placed it in the center of his lobby. How interesting it really proved to the citizens of Marshalltown was reflected in the box office count-up after the run. Manager McClure of the Strand, Emporia, Kansas, put out this ballyhoo for Paramount's Fool's Paradise. What could be more appropriate than foolishness to exploit Fool's Paradise? Manager Burns of the Beecham, Orlando, Florida, changed his box office into a pay office for First National's Payday. Instead of paying out, he received from the waiting line. Manager Noble of the Liberty, Portland, Oregon, used a large cutout of Norma Talmadge against a background of a garden scene made of papier-mâché posts and imitation trellis as a lobby decoration for First National's Smilin' Through. It was placed in the lobby 2 weeks in advance of the playdate. Even Luther Burbank would have looked with interest at this floral window tie-up for First National's Smilin' Through while it was playing at the Olympia, New Haven, Connecticut. The manager of the Olympic told the citizens of Wichita Falls, Texas he was playing First National's Molly O with a huge electric sign 28 feet high and 3 feet wide. When United Artists Orphans of the Storm was playing the Providence Opera House, Providence, Rhode Island, it was a draw as to which attracted the most attention, this window or the picture. The simplicity of the window is one of the things that made it so attractive. The New Theater, Baltimore, Maryland, put out a ballyhoo for RC's Queen of the Turf that was led by Morvich's rival. His rival, however, was the racehorse in Queen of the Turf. This made a splendid ballyhoo, as interest in Morvich is now at fever heat. His name on the lead horse made people talk. 2 of the windows arranged by manager Creamer of the Strand, Chillicothe, Ohio, for First National's Mother O' Mine. The one on the left is a tie-up with a shoe store, while on the right is one with a music store, in which a large cutout from a poster was used. Creamer got hold of a big window of a furniture store, in which kitchen cabinets were featured along with a large poster of First National's Mother O' Mine. The tie-up is a good one, as kitchen cabinets are appreciated by mothers, whether old or young, and women nearly always stop to look at a display of them. The manager of the Empress, Dalles, Oregon, succeeded in evolving something new when he did over the front of his theater to represent a Persian garden in order to obtain atmosphere of the Near East in conjunction with his showing of First National's One Arabian Night. Ferns and foliage hung from the ceiling of the marquee, with streamers running down to complete the effect. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you for your support, and here's your bonus photo of Wesley Berry dressed as a mix between a vamp and a flapper. Since I just uploaded part 15, I thought that this was a good place to pause and make a compilation. I mean, it's been almost 3 years since I started this series, and most of those older videos just get lost and buried by the algorithm anyway, so I think it's good to bring them back and all in one place. I'll continue to make those videos too, but every year or two I'll make a compilation. And another reminder that my Patreon exists if you're interested. Well, that's all for now, all you sheiks and gals out there, but stay tuned for more tales from the Jazz Age.